Hello everyone, welcome back to the Sideline Sedo YouTube channel. I'm Sideline Sedo, and I would like to take this moment to just apologize for the lack of footage in this week's recap. I'm currently undergoing the process of looking for a new camera and some equipment for the set, and trying to formalize a long-term set as opposed to the previous set that you guys saw. And I think it's going to be worth the wait. I think it's going to be a banger of a set. So yeah, just my apologies and hold tight. But as always, every view towards this channel helps me want to make more videos and encourages me to want to do more. So I appreciate every single one of you who takes the time in your day to watch these videos. And as always, please, if you like it, subscribe, like, share, comment, do what you will. If you don't like it, that's even better, Give me some constructive criticism while you're at it, or not. Do what you will. Comment sections are yours, and I'm just the creator. So let's just get into this week's fixtures because there's a lot to get into, and I don't want to waste any time. Aston Villa 2, Everton 1. Goals from Emi Buendia and Danny Ings saw Villa control the game up until the 87th minute, where all mayhem just broke loose, courtesy of super sub Andre Onana for Everton. Sure, they didn't get the win, but he was an incredibly bright spot in a very dull and drab Everton team, in my opinion. He came onto the pitch and was just commandeering. His cross came into Lucas Digne, who scored an own goal. Despite grabbing all 3 points, the game wasn't all sunshine and rainbows for Villa. 3 of their players, Phil Coutinho, Matty Cash, and Diego Carlos, most importantly, all went off with injuries. Further scans for Carlos showed that it was a ruptured Achilles tendon, which could keep him out from anywhere from 6 to 8 months. And even then, it's going to take some time to rehab and get fully fit. So that could be his season. So Villa needs to buy a new center back, despite already splashing in the market for Diego Carlos, who I thought was an extremely excellent purchase. This fixture will have severe repercussions for both sides moving forward and will shape their lineups. Villa's going to have to look at what their backline situation is going to be for the rest of the season, with Carlos probably going to miss it. And Everton, I think that Andre Onana performed so well that if Frank Lampard doesn't start him against Nottingham Forest, then he's absolutely out of his mind. But he's already proven that once or twice to us, so who am I to say? Arsenal 4, Leicester 2. TikTok, Brendan. TikTok. I'm not talking no Chinese state-sponsored media app. I'm talking you gotta pump the brakes here, fella. Get some good results. Make some transfers. I'm begging you. Not for my sake, for yours. You need to do something, Brendan Rodgers. Do something. Do something. Because guess what? Your job is on the clock at this point. Wesley Fofana just handed in a transfer request. Yuri Tielemans and James Maddison have been linked away from the King Power all summer, and you just got battered by Mikel Arteta, who for months and weeks and now years, ever since he came into the Arsenal job really, has been seen by some people, I'd say unfairly, as a laughingstock. Nobody really gave him the chance. But Arsenal and Stan Kroenke have backed Mikel Arteta, and now this summer are backing him in the transfer window, and we're really seeing his philosophy and his managerial prowess come to full effect. Arsenal looks a very dangerous side who play incredibly fluid football at the moment. The likes of Zinchenko and Gabi Jesus are just the start. We could see players like Fabio Vieira really come into their own, and he hasn't really even played for Arsenal this season. So he's a new signing that you're adding into the mix. And you still got the likes of Smith Rowe on the bench, Odegaard starting, Saka on the right, Martinelli on the left. It is absolutely salivating to watch Arsenal play right now. I feel like a Looney Tunes cartoon or something. It is nuts. Arsenal's 4 goals came in the form of a Gabriel Jesus brace, a goal from Granit Xhaka, and a goal from Gabriel Martinelli. William Saliba also got on the score sheet, but not for Arsenal. An own goal from the Frenchman has set everybody on Twitter into an absolute flurry. Oh my god, he's a flop. Oh my god, he's washed. Yeah, he accidentally headed it towards Ramsdale, who for some reason decided to run out. I don't know. I can't sit here and say that I know what was going through either of their heads, but what I do know is that Ramsdale's just kind of got to do better at this point. He is young, but he has a propensity to have bad distribution and poor decision making at times. And then other times he has wrist strength that would make Jordan Pickford look like the Hulk. It's just bad. So I don't think ultimately there's too many negatives to take away here for Arsenal. But Leicester, I think before the end of the transfer window are going to absolutely blow up and go into full panic mode. The writing's on the walls. Mark my words, Brendan Rodgers is about to ruin his reputation at Leicester and probably take 6 months off before getting a gig somewhere in, I don't know, Scotland again, or maybe the Championship. But he's going to end up ruining his Premier League legacy very shortly. I could just smell it in the air. Brighton 0, Newcastle 0. Nick Pope, take a bow, son. Take a bow. Good on you. These Newcastle fans must love Nick Pope already. He made absolutely wonderful save after wonderful save in the second half to keep Newcastle in the game. Sure, they didn't score, but if there's anything to take away from this game, it's the fact that Nick Pope truly deserves to be England's #1 going to the World Cup. And yeah, real boring one. Nothing else really to report on other than the fact that Nick Pope had quite a game and won over probably a lot more Newcastle fans, and quite honestly, maybe even won over Gareth Southgate with that performance, because he looks worth every single penny that they spend on him. Man City 4, Bournemouth 0. So this wasn't the 7-0 I predicted, but it was damn near close, wasn't it? I mean, City dominated, and when I say dominated, I mean dominated possession this game. The first half felt like it was like 80% possession for City. It ended 67% possession for City, 33 for Bournemouth, and Bournemouth had 3 total shots to City's 19. That is just this whole game in a nutshell. I mean, we saw goals from Gundogan, De Bruyne, Foden, and a Jefferson Lerma own goal make City have 4 at the end. Ultimately, people were saying, well, Haaland didn't score. There was some moments where Haaland absolutely could have gotten the score sheet. Not to his own undoing. I mean, Phil Foden was literally across goal and could have just passed it. It was right there, man. But he didn't. And that's something that as the games go on, City will learn to do like just the back of their hand. It's going to become second nature. They're still getting used to playing to each other. But the fact that they're having such a trademark City performance against the Bournemouth team is all that game should tell you. Southampton 2, Leeds 2. A brace from Rodrigo saw him propelled to the top of the Golden Boot race. He has 3 goals in 2 games so far and is absolutely electric in a Leeds shirt. And after 60 minutes, when it just looked all done and dusted and it seemed that Southampton was down and out in the game, we saw quite honestly the most disrespectful, filthiest bit of footwork and trickery in the box I've seen in quite a while by Joe Aribo to make it 2-1. Following that, Kyle Walker-Peters rifled it into the left corner of the goal and made it 2-all. It was quite an entertaining game once again. I really liked seeing both these squads play. They're both young and they both want something to prove, and ultimately both these sides I think are going to be in a relegation scrap coming this season, but that's what makes this fixture, this game specifically, that much more entertaining and have that much more flair and excitement to it. Wolves 0, Fulham 0. I watched, quite honestly, maybe 10 minutes max of this game. It was very boring while I watched it, so I switched on another game, and then after the game ended, I saw it was 0-0, and I was really happy I switched it away. After looking into the highlights and just like the key points of the game, mind you, there wasn't many. The key thing that everyone's going to jump at and sticks out to everyone is the fact that Alexander Mitrovic failed to convert a penalty at the spot. And I mean, is that going to hurt his confidence? It might, but it really would have been a lot better from his perspective to have gotten that goal, be level with Rodrigo. But if Mitrovic's confidence somehow does shatter and go out the window, and all of a sudden he forgets how to score goals, then quite honestly, Fulham's chances of survival are at almost 0%. Brentford 4, Manchester United 0. Oh my God. Oh my God. What on earth was that game? That first half, shades of Liverpool at Old Trafford last season. What on earth were Manchester United thinking? What was Eric Ten Hag thinking? It was, I mean, let me rewind. Johnny De Silva's first effort was going to the right-hand side of the goal, and David De Gea had a very easy, mundane, routine save to make, and it just slipped between his hands. And you're like, all right, That's very unfortunate, but they could bounce back, was my thought. And then less than 10 minutes later, he's passing the ball to Christian Eriksen while there's already 2 Brentford players pressuring the back line, and Jensen's blitzing straight at Eriksen. So Eriksen receives the ball facing with his back away from the goal, and all of a sudden, we see Jensen pick it off him and run in to make it 2-0. But the bees didn't stop stinging there, because off a corner we saw former Burnley center half Ben Mee tower over Lisandro Martinez to win a header and put it in the back of the net to make it 3-0. And then in the 35th minute, before halftime even happened, Brian Mbeumo scored a goal, made it 4-0. Losing by multiple unanswered goals to 0 is nothing new for the recent history of Manchester United. But this loss specifically, if I was a United fan, would sting me even more, because David De Gea is your longest serving, most veteran player, arguably the guy who should be captain over Harry Maguire. And he had 2 absolutely unforced howlers to make the game go into the state of disarray. Admittedly, if United is in such a state of disarray that after a mistake from their goalie being 1-0 down, that they're, even when they're 2-0 down, that they're not going to have some fight and at least get 1 goal to save themselves from the misery, while having one of the best strikers in the history of the game, Cristiano Ronaldo, there, then I really don't know what to say for Man United, because unless they make some drastic changes to their squad before the transfer window shuts, this is going to be a very bumpy and rocky season for Man United moving forward. Nottingham Forest 1, West Ham 0. Declan, come on, mate. What are you doing? You can't be doing that. You get off the penalty spot. You cannot be taking penalties for West Ham ever again. You shouldn't do it. You're the captain of the club now. Don't take the penalties too. Just stick to being a captain. Give it to Scamacca or Bowen or Antonio or Benrahma or literally anybody else who is a more accurate passer than you. Because Declan Rice, you cannot take a penalty to save your life, it seems. And unfortunately for West Ham, it seemed this game that they couldn't score a goal to save their life. They hit the post 2-3 times, and that, I think it was the second or third time, the ball bounced back and it nearly, went into the goal until Scott McKenna blocked it with his arm, and then Declan Rice hit the post another time. And quite honestly, this game was, Nottingham Forest at home, first home game of the Prem in 23 years, I think the stat was, which is awesome, and the fans were definitely rocking and up for it. But they need to become a little sharper, because the goal they scored was at an absolutely sloppy goal in added time in the first half. So, I think moving forward, West Ham need to do some answering as to how their set piece routines and rotations are going to go, because I don't think Declan Rice should be taking their penalties anymore. Just because you're captain of West Ham, it does not mean you're Mark Noble. You are no Mark Noble, sir. You're a John Terry in a Champions League final on a wet night. That's what you are, Declan. You are not a good penalty shooter. You're the opposite of it. Chelsea 2, Tottenham 2. Let's get ready to rumble, is what you would expect for somebody to be saying after that game, because wow, Tuchel and Conte look like they really don't like each other, it seems. No, not at all. It was very awkward and tense, the arguing between the two. You had Tuchel getting mad at Conte for celebrating a goal. You had the handshake gate incident, which had to get them separated. You have all the stories coming out afterwards about how Conte was barging around and shoved an injured Kovacic out of his way. It was a very entertaining game for not just the football, but also a lot of the ongoings around it. I guess a lot of people are going to say this is the new next big Prem manager rivalry. We'll see, but that was a very entertaining game. Despite the fact that there was a lot of suspicious calls not going the way of Chelsea, and both of the real key situations that everyone's going to pick out is the Bentancur foul on Kai Havertz, which I thought was a foul, and I'm surprised the linesman didn't even react and like wave it as a foul, but everyone I've seen has been saying that was a foul. But then there's also the fact that maybe Richarlison was standing in the way of the goalie. You have the fact that Christian Romero, who somehow miraculously managed not to get a yellow card. Mind you, not a single Tottenham player got a yellow card. We saw a red card for Conte, 2 yellows, but a red card sending off for Conte at the end of the game. But we didn't see a single Tottenham player get a yellow card, Christian Romero included, who was putting in very suspicious challenge after suspicious challenge and just being the most Christian Romero version of himself that he could be, all the way up until the very last corner of the game, which he was literally pulling Marc Cucurella down by his hair. So apparently there's no explicit rule upon further investigation. There's an incident a while back when Man United was being managed by David Moyes, where I guess Fellaini was pulled down by his hair, and Moyes took anger to it and said why wasn't it called? And apparently there's no explicit ruling saying something along those lines, and kind of threw everybody off. And then he doesn't give Romero a yellow card, whistles it back, and then they score. Ultimately, in my eyes, I think that should have been a foul, bright as day. If you're in the box with somebody else and ultimately somebody gets pulled down or shoved down, any other ref is going to be like, yep, that's a foul. Somebody take a free kick for the other side, and that would be that. But Liverpool won, Crystal Palace won. Darwin, what are you doing, Darwin? What are you doing, Darwin? Come on, Darwin. That was, listen, the flashbacks I've been having of just so many pivotal moments in my football and viewing experience and experiencing the sport just came back all at once. And they weren't good. They were just straight negatives. The very first memory I have of watching footy, 2006 World Cup, France versus Italy. I hardly knew the sport. I hardly knew the players. I didn't know names. I didn't know clubs that well. I was very, very, very young. And it was absolutely just not in my mind space, but I vividly remember watching this game. Why? If you've been around that long, you'll know that's the game where Zidane headbutted Materazzi. And for some context, at the time, I wasn't really following Liverpool. I wasn't following any clubs. But for some reason, I had a very personal connection and affinity towards Zinedine Zidane. I just really loved the way he played. I watched the whole run of France, and then that happened. It was a shell shock. I remember asking my dad at the moment, like, what's going on? He just shook his head, and he's like, I don't know. He hit him with his head, and he's off. And he was captaining France, and I'm not French. I couldn't care less if France won, other than the fact that I was a kid rooting for Zidane. But it stuck with me. It absolutely just flipped my world upside down in that very moment. And then, need I go on with moment after moment with Luis Suarez? I know people are saying, the Uruguayan connection, Darwin's the next Suarez, but not like this. Come on, Darwin. Not like this. I watched it back, and there is not a single reason, angle, anything really that I can say as a Liverpool fan where I'm going to be like, yeah, Darwin was doing the right thing there, because he wasn't. And I would be remiss to say that I'm honestly surprised that he, went about it like this. And when he first joined, you could go back to my first video. It is literally on Darwin Nunez. I was very amped up. I thought he would do fine under the pressure. He seemed to be having a life growing up that was filled with pressures that were bigger than playing for a club like this, because ultimately, yes, they were connected to his rise in his career in footy, but at the end of the day, it seems like some of the pressures might be catching up to Darwin. He does have a hot head, similar to another Uruguayan that you might know, but this game just like, I have been watching the headbutt back and back and again and again. And yeah, I could go and talk about some of the tactics in this game or whatever, but there's nothing really else for me to talk about other than the unbelievable Lucho Diaz goal and the fact that there was a couple of chances for Crystal Palace to absolutely bury the game away. They could have been up 2-3-0 and they just failed to convert. But it does speak to the state of Liverpool right now. A bit of an injury crisis, a bit of a fitness crisis. You know, Jota's out. Firmino has a knock. Gomez was maybe going to start, but then he picked up the knock, so he was on the bench. Henderson had a knock and he was on the bench. You know, Matip's out. Konate's out. The list goes on and on. Curtis Jones out. Kelleher's out. So, you know, there's already a lot of pressure, a lot of stuff right at the start of the Premier League season for Liverpool to worry about. Credit to Wilfried Zaha for his goal. Absolutely rinsed Nat Phillips in the game. I mean, I love Nat Phillips, but there's a reason he's like the 5th choice center back for us. And despite, you know, him trying his hardest in the game, like he's not gonna fare well against somebody like Wilfried Zaha on any day of the week. So what did you expect is what I'd say to that one. And finally, just on this topic to leave it all off, I've been seeing, well, if you guys haven't seen, if you go to Joaquin Henderson's Instagram, the guy who got headbutted by Darwin Nunez, you check his stories out, he posted certain screenshots of a select number of what he said was around 300 to 400 separate messages that were all effectively death threats from what he presumed to be Liverpool fans. And as a Liverpool fan myself, all I can say is I'm sorry, Joaquin. Ultimately, this parasocial behavior that kind of pervades into the viewing experience of all these clubs, where you have just hordes and hordes and legions of fans just consistently threatening death, saying slurs to players, just being generally nasty people to players who they've never met, who probably will never meet them, and ultimately just harassing people online. It's just some low-life scummy shit, honestly. Like that, if you're doing anything like that, harassing these players, you know, being a pest in their DMs for whatever reason, and just spreading hateful, hurtful messages because, you know, he effectively outsmarted Darwin. And it seemed like Joaquin Anderson very quickly realized that Darwin had incredibly thin skin and was for some reason extremely on edge for that game. So he immediately started targeting that, and he did everything. I mean, honestly, it seemed like everything he did wasn't necessarily like too nasty or aggressive towards Darwin. And then, I mean, he baited him and Darwin fell for it. And honestly, I'm really disappointed. It's kind of tricky, but ultimately, I just think that after such an entertaining game of fixtures, that we should all just kind of take it easy and not be like Tuchel and Conte about to slit each other's throats. So, as always, if you enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe, share, and comment. Do what you will to help promote it if you enjoy the content. And as always, I'm Sideline Sedo. Thank you for watching. Stay gold.